Hello, Americans. My name is Anthony Wall. I was next to the World Trade Center towers the morning of the World Trade Center attack. And I didn't know other names, but I recorded people involved intercities and interstates, inter and intra campuses. When I was a sophomore, they tried to make a fake exception where I was arrested. I went to the Weathersfield Police Department, but I didn't have any conversations with them. I noted too, they didn't even try to communicate with me. I was watching, I would pay attention to everything about that. Those people that were in that, there was a reportedly a relative of a Congressman Larson in that class. And then there was only two other people and me. I said, and we were all like in the four corners. And it was like, and they changed it too to another crossing for part of the year, right on the same side of the high school, the eastern side. But that involved also the school security guard and the nurse, and something a guy Gina Vels jumped over a fence, and he told me to come over there. And then he ran towards Fred Griset's house. And a Delafair family has a probate court and their judging the family. I never saw them on campus as the Delafair family. They're involved with probate court judges, family members with House/S near me. I never saw them in my area. But they have people tied to them who came in my area and planted evidences, who have roles of the World Trade Center attack, including afterwards to hide it. Weathersfield Police fake transcripts of me, ties to me when I was a kid, and now as an adult too. There are some Mendez police. One of the older brother was at the police station when I went to get a police report, and I didn't have one word of conversation to that guy there or in my life. The older, reportedly a brother of an Eric Mendez. I never had a class with him at all either. Never saw him around. I tried to make a fake, quick exception, like I saw him a couple times, years apart. So just someone passed by, you don't know. They try to make a fake exception completely too with the Joshua Julian, where Facebook is involved with foreign and domestic and interbranch. These are people also hyper additionally. Whereas they are victims, hyper victims, when they speak, they won't allow. They don't know how to deal with subjects. They have cruel and unjust punishment. It's not right to compare marijuana to alcohol. Marijuana is a plant too, but alcohol is processed. And they have Central Connecticut State University has people involved with a Detective Samuda, with two female judges and former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, involved with people with sexual and medical offenders of little boys and girls, with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, on off campuses connected, collusion/S, with identity theft, fraud, slanders too, and with differences, and relative to where and how, right in our faces, they have communicated other than our founders left to be communicated about the value of reading the words and pretending that's science. Like what was entrenched. There were only permitted rules even with slavery, and censoring anybody who would try to overcome, except for the way they wanted to be countered as collusion/S, blaming on other things, others ourselves, things that it forced and kept and keeps. The World Trade Center attack was effectively pulled off for predicate acts with facts, methods/S, cover up/S, reliant upon everyone now pretending it's science to use words like extremism and radical as they have used them. They can't afford to have discerned why and how English values the predicate while the law values the predicate act. Boxing's, but makes no sound but shush. It prefers the shush sound. For example, this is more practical, as we can observe. When we observe the syntax of the names of the people, the sciences, there was the inside the syntax, inside the school book depository, involved with the assassination of President slash Chief Kennedy is all we need. And see, a breaching knows that method knows that nature itself does show us that, and our founders did and do show us this through communications. So the breaching method employed self-fired rules, using the words of our founders also declassified that and how and why. The only founder that we know the name of, because they only have the security to let us know the name of James Madison. Everyone else was counter-extorted. But if they were a founder, we don't know. Even if they were president slash chief, even James Madison, even George Washington. See, everyone has self-fired roles, pretending and having pretended other. At the founding locations across America, I didn't even go to them. It's discernible. They have other communicated at Webb House. Now it's renamed the Webb Stevens Museum. It was first Webb House, and now it's the Webb Stevens Museum. The being the definite article, no. And there's a witch trial place next to it, which reveals things, even if they was completely made up. At the same time, there were laws against all differences. Then they're all difference /s. This breaching method only allowed nature's demonstrations of how we are using demonstrations /s of how we are using system /s as its own. But now we're using it tactical ulterior from what could defend that and afford to be, let alone to protract short words for how it demonstrates us to use short words regarding reality and regarding positive and or negative. And we're supposed to, every identity has positive relativity to positive and negative simultaneously. The algorithm is about identity. The algorithm /s. And in the ancients, there are proofs that the sciences were then re-engineered. A breaching method forced this. It is more probable and more practical than where they have theory and the syntax of it and the appreciation of it. The value of the syntax of someone just because they're an expert. And the value of things just because of the outcome of cases. Or just because someone's uncharged but with a huge bill and they're and they're doing all kinds of things to shut people up. If you pay attention to the numbers, and what our president keeps trying to say things and then they wipe it away and say, yeah, he uses no evidence. And while Quinnipiac University, for example, in Yukon, has all kinds of federal evidences crimes and rolls with criminal enterprises. And I never had a class with a Christopher Collins, too. A Christopher Collins sought me out to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm. And as an intelligence community has collusions with a Christopher Collins and with people with families named Smith, a Judge Smith, and others involved with sexual and medical offenders of kids, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, people involved with body dumping spots, and rolls with the differences, with the black KKK, Confederate flag theme, Latino theme. So then they'll say, oh, I don't even know him. The guy sought me out to pretend to plant evidences. That's what's recorded and became relative because these are people involved with the World Trade Center attack on our side who had time collusions with the Saudis per worse. Wethersfield police forced my Saudi friend to collusion /s with this older Mendez police and his brother. Also collusions with FBI Director Robert Luskin with people named DeMoro and that live near them with Valleycrest Street in Wethersfield. And there's a Kerr family on I believe Meadowgate and they have roles with planting syntax and evidences in databases with sexual and medical offenders of kids, foreign and domestic, and New Britain Superior Court, Harper Courts, and the Connecticut District Court and their family members have roles of proven child abusers, leaders of kids, years apart, and their roles with uses of rights to lie and hide things where they're confessing in this too. In other words, I never sought them out, and when I did try to seek them out, they tried to make that fake exception too. They hid what was actually recorded with that. A Perone family too sought me out to plant evidences with some black KKK Confederate flag theme, Latino theme, with investigators involved with some sexual medical offenders of kids, and people who brought up confessions tied to Mr. Hagenbar. I never had a personal conversation with him. I don't know. In other words, there are proofs that he's planting fake things with the other. There's a Casper family too, and a Joello is one of the ones who recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, as Facebook did. He has collusions with a former Mayor Gold. Even if that wasn't him, it was just someone pretending to be him on Facebook. The timing of it, where he was with a former Mayor Gold, who non-verbally confirmed to me when I was a kid and I was an adult. He has increasing collusions with people involved with Russians, Ukraine, Italy, Korea, all kinds of medical corruption, and other mayors involved with untimely deaths years apart, and people were involved with lie progression cover-ups with them, and planting evidence on all sides of my house, with the police families that planted evidence, and retired police chiefs involved with the 80 Carrick Drive. And they're reportedly related to a Phil Cololo. A Bob Chase from Whiting Forensics brought the Phil Cololo up as one of the ones who was involved with them forcing the principal child abuser. Also with Sandy Hook Intelligence and a prison on there. And they have more people with the campuses at Sandy Hook. And Sandy Hook Promises has collusion /S. These are a bunch of people at next to the state capitol and conjunctions to it at Hartford, Connecticut, who have predicate acts with facts, with intelligence families in my area through time. And they'll tell you this themselves. They were forced check terms, but some ways it was on their own. The difference of that is exploited too. I minded my business too. They're in the backgrounds lying in the news about my motivations for using their names too. A bunch of people confessed, but like they make confessions when you walk by a corner, and then they'll tell you that's what they do that, and then make it look like they had a conversation with you. In other words, Subby Bajario said that he was influenced to plant evidences regarding a Raiders jacket. I never saw him on the inside of a campus in my life. He's one of the ones involved. He sought me out too to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm. He has rules of people named DeMoro and Cololo on the sides, on three sides of and Walters, Christopher Walters too, on three sides of the community center in Wethersfield. In the corner there of Knott Street and Walker Hill, and along Walker Hill, there's a Mr. Parker English, and our others associated with him, with the foreign and domestic military involved with World Trade Center predicate acts through other natures of organized crimes, with their databases, but only through their roles forcing people. See, where there are victims /hyper victims, where there are predators used remotely, is where they won't respond. They have a judge. They have a Heather Hansen and others recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, forced to collusions with some medical and sexual offenders of kids, with a Gilmore family. It might be more than one too. I don't know if she's related to a teacher I had with that, and I barely had any communications with her at all. And in other words, these are people with the departments at Central Connecticut State University, individually grouped in together, used remotely criminally foreign influence. And they have rules with where they put the marijuana spots years ahead of time. They knew this was coming, but they're doing it collusion slash S, like a Leahy family faked conversations with me at Hartford Hospital, and a Lombardo family. But I didn't even have a word at all with the you know I with that younger Brendan Leahy, and a guy I'm assuming it was his father, Brendan Leahy, because they look similar. And there was a woman that said it was a Leahy, but I only had one word, him, to sarcastically, and they pretended they won't communicate with me because they know that they fake things in databases, but also with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and people that have syntax of CIA. CIA have like a Kelly Kaczmarek, who came on Facebook, is one of the people with CIA and FBI on Facebook with syntax. I never saw her in my life, in real life. She has roles with a bunch of people on Facebook. With a police chief, Cintron, too, has a Joshua Schumack, has a Larry Martin, involved intercities with him, and with Elm Streets, and people associated with the Elm Street corner in Rocky Hill and Wethersfield through time, who also have collusion slash S with putting fake things in databases. But with other people influencing that, regardless of who's roles with that, because there are more names involved here than just our country's A through Z, too, including Saudi Arabia, leading up to the World Trade Center attack in it and since. So Mark Violet and the Oliveri family, they have collusions with Elm Streets in Rocky Hill and Wethersfield, conjunctions to it and to that, like the state judicial branch offices, with some black KKK, Confederate black theme, Latino theme, and people involved with home break-ins tied to them. I'm not saying they were involved, I don't know. It was implied that they might have been one of the ones that were involved with Heather Hansen, who said that she was involved with a home break-in. And then I went with her after it. And I wasn't there when Joe DeMauro threw from Rocky Hill through apples at cars, and there was a big car track in his backyard near the Route 3. And they had people stand there. They were planting evidence to describe it. And so I threw one of them when they said it because I wanted them to put it on the record. That's why they don't respond yet. And then they pretend they're trying to judge people's behavior. These are people in intercities who are intercampuses putting fake things in databases. Mr. Abruzzi has organized crimes with them, per my educators at Central Connecticut State University, and per kids when I was a kid and now I was an adult. That was when I was in 5th grade. He was my teacher. I don't know what he put in the database. I never had a personal conversation with him. And I only minded my business to reply to people there, too. Increasingly, the Leahy family has sexual and medical offenders involved with them, and with a DeMauro family involved with FBI Director Robert Luskin, involved with identity thefts and frauds, putting fake things, spreading lies with grammar school kids. Increasingly, Rick Ciampaglione was forced to collusions with that, pretend he knew me, behind my back to people, with people involved with a Kevin Harris, who was reportedly intimately tied to a daughter of a Mr. Murphy, who was a principal when I went to the campus. In other words, I only had good feelings for Mr. Murphy. I mean, and I barely know him, in other words. And so in other words, it's not who's good or bad, but then they jump in and they make it like that. And because they're hiding their roles with Korea, too. He has roles with Korea, I discern. With these people, too, with Mark Violet. Has people that know my name, I don't even know their name. He has roles with UConn, with all kinds of drugs and medicines crimes, and different qualities of pot, things like that. And these are people extorting me with my own colleges. Trinity College and Central Connecticut State University have collusions with the World Trade Center attack force, too. They're being extorted, too. An officer who used the name Darth Vader is involved with some untimely deaths. One at Trinity College, with people who made confessions about another one on my street from another area who brought up the child abusers campus to me, and the name Scalora involved with it. So there was a girl, a woman named Scalora. I noticed outside my hotel room at the outside door, to the whole building, not my door personally, right when I was about to walk outside there. I never had communications with her verbally. She's one of the ones who forced Saudis to collusions with the people named DeMoro, involved also with the Wethersfield police, and now this Mendez police brother, and his brother was in the hallway of New Britain Superior Court when I was let out of prison. I was arrested for harassment, and I never even got to speak. They kept calling me up and making confessions and confirming what I caught them, what obligated me to call them with. And everyone has it hidden too. They jumped in with rights. So O'Neill family has their kids. I don't even know who they are. Involved with multiple courts and Whiting forensics with state police, with West Hartford, foreign and domestic military, and people from Saudi Arabia after the World Trade Center attack. Recorded as them confirming too. A Joseph Dennis from Wethersfield is one of the ones involved with a Joe Aiello and a Joe DeMoro and a O'Brien family with interbranch with mayors and retired mayors who have been putting predicate acts with facts in databases and with their teachers when they're in other classes and in other campuses from people. Identity theft, fraud, thing, and increasingly since they were kids, which was brought up, and they still won't get onto paper. In other words, they bring these subjects up and they are used to measure and maintain. They can't afford to have what's actually recorded because they put fake exceptions. They're hiding what's actually recorded online, and then they're hiding the actual value of their readings of statutes regarding the value of what's written over the World Wide Web, over the exceptions. They can't afford, the readings of statutes are, we have black people as whites of eyes. The CIA, the FBI, Homeland Security, their transition with the name of it from Department of Immigration and Naturalization, the location /S right next to Fox Connecticut News. Increasingly people involved, collusion /S. Johnny Duke. I saw Mike Tyson on Church Street. But it's weird. I didn't try to talk to him because first I might have pissed him off. I was going to do a joke. But so Johnny Duke went up there. We're from Connecticut. We drove up there to fight at Church Street boxing gym in New York City, Manhattan. That guy, though, and his neighbors, Johnny Duke, increasingly people on my street, like the Joe Aiello, has ties to them. And we're in the area on Griswold Street. He has rules with the side entrances, too, to Millwoods Park. Are people involved planting evidences on the side entrances there through time? A Mark Carone and a Kevin Carone. Mark Violet said they have collusions with them. And they're also recorded. Roles were identified. I never saw them on the inside of the campus in my life. In other words. And they have they have military and a family with the side entrance named military associated with I don't even know their name. I never saw her on the inside of the campus in my life either. Erica Donahue. I never got the word of conversation with her. In other words, I'm sorry I have to tell you about you guys on this. They're using you to repeat fake things. And they had some kind of sexual circle where they're pretending not to like each other, where Joe DeMoro and Mike Kerr were with men and women and neighbors. There's a Mr. Neville who's recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed with those places there. It's like where an Omni place used to be. And now there's like some kind of a church or something there. And there's a bank near there. And like, I don't know if it was some, Phil Collola was also brought up by people in confessions regarding that. And the DeMoro family involved with the FBI director, Robert Luskin, put fake things in transcripts regarding his rules with um, a machete, planting evidences with that, and collusions. You're being used to sense. I caught them with predicate acts with them, with sexual medical offenders of kids, and then pretending other with the machete trick, asking to borrow a machete, and then having us get pulled over by the police, and they ask if we know him. In other words, I wasn't going to tell them what it was recorded. They're hiding it. In other words, I don't have obligations like that. They have two retired police chiefs and their intimate ties involved with 80 Carriageville Drive with them. And with the educators of Ray Claw, I don't even know them. I never had a class with them in grammar school. They tried to make fake exceptions. I never had a class with them in middle school either. They tried to make fake exceptions in high school to cover up what I caught them doing with a whole bunch of other countries. As they're ones with the name Scalora, they said it's related to them too. People with the name Scalora and Phil Collola have roles with the World Trade Center attack. And with people named O'Neill, I don't even know who they are, what they look like. They're putting fake things in databases too, all kinds of drugs and medicines crimes. These are families that are on off the state corrections offices and off the state judicial branch offices in Wethersfield. Collusion / us, also with houses and names next to the state Board of Education. Criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw. Inside the nature of debate / S contains self-guided collusions are relative, where they have replaced how our founders left the classified. Nature itself shows us. Don't use the words of the people at the time, pretending not to realize all these ways that nobody had free speech and everyone had to pretend other at the same time. Prepare the mind who disbelieves. So former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, various natures of federal criminals, including ones as his co-defendants, they faked conversations with me with WFSB in Rocky Hill, Connecticut. And with their sources, including their interbranch sources, that are forging and switching names and sequences in Connecticut as ones who are involved and campuses in their criminal capacity while they're involved with child abusers, leaders of kids. And these are also ones next to the other networks, including the FBI next to WTNH in New Haven, Connecticut. Many tied to a Fred Gruzet are recorded involved with other countries with sexual and medical offenders of kids. And with leaders of kids involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, where other people are telling them to act. They use the right to lie when they don't have the right to lie. And they are also involved with the one switching and forging names. And with some black KKK, Confederate flag team, in Italian theme, but also religious spots theme, and the difference of that. In other words, and these are people inter and intra campuses, inter-cities through time, as ones also all sides of criminal and civil cases and interbranch and intelligence put in the same sequence ships at the same time, same relative delusions. Relative because, for example, where other things, others ourselves, are being formally forced and informally collusions, even when they're countering each other, to be blamed for things that our founders communicated for us to blame in the human fact, human nature, breaching method that had been entrenched. Northern colonies and southern colonies with crazy things against women, against black pupils, against whites of eyes. Even slavery, northern colonies and southern colonies rules. Specifically to keep, once we got out of it, and while we were coming out of it, we're sensed by what no one wanted that. But to come out of it, you have to do it syntactically. Otherwise, you stay in it syntactically the way everyone. Well, that's not night. But in other words, the breaching method needs everyone to keep other things, others, ourselves blamed. it needs motivations. They even bring their kids in, and there's good people. You'll leave the evil ones. You can heal them all, but worse than criminal incompetence. Sandy Hook campuses have roles with intelligence families that used to live near me, and Weathersfield, Connecticut. These are ones inter and intra cities that are apart with a whole bunch of different countries. And an O'Brien family also has roles with people from Korea. And see, with medical corruption and relative delusions, the experts on the names of the people of sciences like psychiatry, they have delusions too, in place of right where they have too. Collusion slash S, criminal, replacing what our founders left as principle, as the principles for us to understand them properly. They have our founders framed for even slavery, beginning with leaving out what our founders declassified about how and why. James Madison is the only founder that they had the security to declassify for us to know the name of. And so they do all kinds of tricks and have all kinds of fake transcripts, fake drugs uses, alcohol uses, all kinds of methods slash us of getting away with it. Where foreign and domestic have at Harvard Hospital collusions inter and intra cities and inter and intra campuses per worse than just the other countries involved. And they're the same problem. Right through world wars, these places, you have to understand why and how there's a witch trials place next to Webb House, now renamed that Webb Stevens Museum, and how there have been staged, recorded self-value collusion slash S and or two sensing for any with all exceptions. That and how others communicated for those places and for our founders and for George Washington, why he had to come to Webb House to counter extort right before the last battle of the Revolutionary War. So you guys have those narratives they had to force pretended. They had to pretend because there were still even slavery roles left entrenched northern South. An expert doesn't use their expertise. In other words, to pretend it was about a tax, tea taxes. In other words, while there was slavery, and that no one wanted. We were supposed to know this clearer than day. It was all against women, against them. So no one could discern the breaching method fluent through this. Because then everyone was a part of nature's demonstration slash S. We are. Even the suburbs were designed before America's founders were born by a torture, extortion, and for a torture, extortion, in fact, human nature, therefore physical slavery method, which is also a sensing as for itself method slash S. Everyone the slash S part, the plural parts, and the standing nature of criminal and seditious natures of positive treatments, negative treatments, subject treatments, and relative to exceptions and exception nature, as nature shows us to use it. In other words, its cruel and unjust punishment can be discerned just with these subject treatments. So a Leahy family is one of the ones involved with the qualities of pot they use to influence kids, and then as an adults, like and Anthony Yagman, also involved with federal evidences crimes and with criminally foreign influence uses of my signature by some doctors he confessed on Facebook, a Dr. Dingleberry and or a Dr. Dewberry, one of those names. But both of those people with those names are on the website or were of Facebook. Facebook has collusions with Harvard Hospital too. And they know this, and with New Britain Superior Court, and with the FBI, and with the CIA jumped in there too, and the military. I don't know who the Newington Marine guy was, but there were also ones tied to Pat Vincent In other words, who was involved with his educators. I never had a word of conversation with Pat Vincent. He has ties to a Fred Gruzet, who my educators recorded, confessed, demonstrate, confirmed, are involved also with class placements. Like people all along, Pat Vincent had roles of people all along Route 175 with a former Mayor Gold and with a police chief Cintron and his reported intimate tie, his family with people named Mazzucato Bakery. And Reno Mazzucato, I never saw him at any of the schools I went to. They tried to make a fake exception years ago. He has roles all along Route 175, planting evidence to people from Whiting Forensics, per them, per his reported father-in-law, Police Chief Cintron, and also recorded. They have a bunch of people involved with child abusers, leaders of kids years apart, involved with that corner of the street where they have a Mazzucato Bakery from years before that, who also have roles planting evidence on all sides of my house from other areas. Even when they didn't, I never saw him on my street, like Anthony Agnew, and his roles with some Domain police brothers and family, and they're reportedly neighbors of Reno Mazzucato. And they have roles next to Fox Connecticut News with former director of the FBI, Robert Lusk, and his co-defendants and their family members, and a bunch of people that have all along Two-Route Highway where it runs into Hangdog Lane, and conjunctions to it, into that, like the Berlin Turnpike before the heart of Hartford. And Route 3, in conjunction to into that, like Route 3 in the state judicial branch offices. These are the same names with the corrections officers, judicial branch offices, and the Board of Education, criminally foreign influence, tactical delusions, raw, per method/s. That is also predicate acts methods. I'm not even a lawyer. We have black pupils, whites of eyes to discern this. So this is cruel and unjust punishment. It's also, in other words, these are people putting fake uses of drugs and of medicines into databases, and they're using what other doctors and people type in there without, allowing discern it cleaned. In other words, they're faking conversations between people. They have a whole bunch of people tied to a Leahy family, like a Rick Cianfaglione, who has multiple courts personally and professionally involved with Rick Cianfaglione and his roles with identity theft, fraud, slanders with his teachers behind my back in my grammar school, with people with intelligence families that live near me. Increasingly, they all have collusions intercities, and then next to Hartford Hospital with the businesses and houses next to them, like a John Maiano sought me out to make a long confession about and demonstration with Central Connecticut State University. His roles too. A bunch of people tied to a Schumack family have roles with agencies all along Route 3 and conjunctions to it and to that as people involved. I don't know if they're with nuclear or what you're doing with the Central Connecticut State University fire departments. They have a bunch of fire department families at Hartford Hospital involved with predicate acts with multiple boyfriends at once. One reportedly having been the leasing agent, one of the leasing agent's sons, next to on Covington Street in New Britain, Connecticut, is increasingly recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed with people from the area involved with predicate acts on my street in Wethersfield. That's in New Britain, Connecticut. And it's relative to their time collusions with the World Trade Center attack and with the news that fake conversations would be about that intercities. And while they forced the principal child abuser with more recorded then and now, and how it's affected good people do evil because you guys are forcing everyone to speak through you guys to cover up what you need to hide. So you make good people stay evil. And then it comes out too. Nature shows there's criminal insidiousness natures of uses of their own difference /s and of other people's They have criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, raw readings of statutes and oppressants in of the religions. Many. This is what we all agree. We want discern where it's relativity. Then they're pretending. Well, that's what we all agree. They have rules with reading. Psychiatry has all kinds of drugs and medicines crimes, creating medical conditions in people with things and faking it. Look, my teeth dried out. They forced me to take something, or they want to stab me with a thing and put even worse in me. In other words, when they were forced me for mental evaluation, and then when I was in jail too, waiting because I was charged with harassment. When I caught them with the child abusers, and they're hiding what I caught from the other parents, the ones that weren't collusion/s. A Brian Silver and a Brendan Leahy, and women in their family, including generations of their family, work with Harper Hospital and a Lombardo family. And they have a bunch of people who have roles with untimely deaths years apart. And it has something to do with their roles with World Trade Center predicate acts. Because in the fake conversations with me, they faked it about that. And I didn't have conversations with their patients. And when I made an exception, that was consciously with that girl I hugged. She was like sick or was older. She might have been undercover, whatever. Because they have that people associated with Kevin Dillon involved with the undercover police who are actually collusions with overt criminal enterprises and were recorded sexual and medical offenders of kids and predicate acts with the collusion/s with the same house/s I never saw in my area in my life. They have something to do with the Weathersfield Community Center is increasingly collusions of people on identity theft, fraud, slanders against me. The intelligence community sought me out and their family members. They influenced the Keene family. I never saw Dan Keene inside of a campus in my life. They tried to make it look like other. I never saw him inside of a campus in my life. These are people putting fake, like trying to making things that look like, oh, but how were you in an election against him? I never signed up for an election. So they're putting fake things in databases with people increasingly tied to retired mayors. There is a Fianza family who has recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed collusion/s with people from Cromwell, Connecticut, and all along Route 3 and Elm Streets, involved interstate. So people from with the judicial branch offices too, and on Tura Highway. He said it's his cousin right across the street from LaSalle Sevilla, who was in my fourth grade class, who's increasingly brought up by people involved with the World Trade Center attack. But I only know them from other areas. I never saw South Sevilla on my city street. Eric Jensen sought me out to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm. A South Sevilla was involved with him and with neighbors of his on Dearborn Street in Newington, who are increasingly involved with a bunch of people with the same house/s near me, involved with also probate court judges, family members, have houses and businesses near there. And they have family members together, like a Della Fairbank family and a Spada family, have roles with a Fred Gruzet and others who were planting evidence on my street with the family, further with the extended family members, with the principal child abuser and Whiting Forensics and the World Trade Center attack and the interbranch refusing to get on paper because they've been lying about me behind my back to people in my family I didn't even know, ones I never even hardly ever saw in my life. In other words, as ones involved with, they attach people that they attach me to fake conversations with the people around me about the World Trade Center attack. People around me and my family that I never even had conversations with about things with that. They fake conversations about it. And they lie about the outcome of legal cases. A bunch of people with an NLRB case who have predicate acts and organized crimes with WFSB and with their area since I was a kid. Mark Violet also has people named with the military next to the state capitol who are involved with some victims advocates and one of the victims of a Subsidiario stealing his speaker box, who's involved with the next to the state capitol, with my neighbors, involved and with intelligence families, with falsified police reports, fake transcripts at the Wethersfield police station when I was a kid and now I was an adult too, as ones increasingly that knew my Saudi friend before I knew her. In other words, I kept finding out more about that, and they're listening to people, and they just adapt by just putting fake things in databases. That's why and how. In other words, something to do with their roles with the buildings next to Fox Connecticut News too. Are increasingly people from Two Rod Highway and Hangdog Lane involved with courts and prosecutors with identity theft, fraud, slanders, and the news at the same time. That's also, please follow mandated law. Much more is recorded. They know that confirmed things to me about body dumping spots, and as by names next to the body dumping spot, one of the body dumping spots, who has collusions with names next to the other body dumping spot, and the serial killer, etc. But all this stuff was brought up at the same time with the World Trade Center attacks, predicate acts, fake transcripts of WFSB. A Mike Kerr, and a Joe DeMoro also sought me out to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm. They have federal evidence of crimes with a bunch of people, I don't know their names there, tied to them with their roles with foreign and domestic. And people all along Route 3 and with the Wethersfield Judicial Branch offices and corrections offices in conjunctions to it and to that. And people who put fake things in databases at campuses and had collusions with child abusers, leaders, and kids years apart. They have roles forcing that principal child abuser. There's an officer, Jerry Miller, who's one of the ones involved planting evidence on all sides of my house. My neighbor confirmed knowing of Eric Mendez or his brother, the Mendez brothers, a part of this. The Mendez brothers in part intercampuses, intercities involved with sexual and medical offenders of kids and overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and FBI. And this is hyper additionally that Wethersfield Fire Department have an officer, which is Inspector Mike, who wanted to identify himself. And a Mike Del Ferro sought me out to make a fake exception, make it look like I know him at a fire department campus, reportedly a campus of I don't know if it's a real fire department, fire campus, with some black KKK, Confederate flag theme, Latino theme, Italian theme. It has roles with people with a John DeMoro, and something to do with his roles with Town Line Drive, and their roles with a Joseph Lieberman, and a whole bunch of people with some Jew syntax. And they bring it like a Mike Levine is too on Route 3, one of the ones recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed by my educators involved with people. They're forcing, everyone will tell you this. See, there are people I never had classes with who are, that's what they do. When people try to tell about the past properly, they have people that aren't even in classes on go and pretend to say fake to cover up the fake things they put. That's how it's relative to how they keep everyone so stupid, pretending other with black people's whites of eyes, pretending things are debatable. In other words, pretending science spoke, honesty spoke for New York City, for the suburbs, let alone New York City. Black pupils, peer, who disbelieves. Get the Connecticut into branch on paper, one name in sequence. Hartford courts and the Britain Superior Court and the District Court and their family members recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. They've been planting evidences and collusions with organized crime acts and methods at Covington Street, and not legitimately, not where they have the legitimate rights to lie, with people from Wethersfield through time, New Britain, Connecticut. In other words, and a whole bunch of boyfriends of a Bobby with the intelligence community at the corner of Rocky Hill, on Route 3 and Elm Street in Rocky Hill. There are also people with Elm Street and Route 3 in Wethersfield named Oliveri, also at that corner in Rocky Hill, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. These are also people at Trinity College, collusions with FBI Director Robert Luskin and with roles with the uses of home break-ins years apart, clicks, and untimely deaths years apart, and their roles with identity theft, fraud, slanders against me behind my back to my teachers, and their roles with federal evidences crimes with the state judicial branch offices, which is not far from their house, no, and Oliveri House, and that Elm Street in Weathersfield in Route 3, which is distinct from Elm Street in Rocky Hill in Route 3, which is a whole bunch of people involved with acting tied to the people who put fake things in databases. And that's recorded. I minded my business. In other words, they're faking communications between people. The campus is filmed 24/7, like Central Connecticut State University. They're putting fake transcripts and making things like at Harvard Hospital. They're putting fake transcripts and then pretending that through the mail. Get them on paper. Then they're trying to get people to bring up their names. That's what they said they did with one of the families involved here. So a bunch of prosecutors and judges involved with people named Cololo, DeMoro, and Scalora, further involved with sexual and medical offenders of kids with this Leahy family and a Lombardo family at Hartford Hospital, also with the houses and businesses next to them through time, involved with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, not legitimately. And then further, their collusions with the names next to the state corrections offices and judicial branch offices and news networks putting identity theft, fraud, slanders. Get them the heck on paper into branch and fix the databases.